the chat as well, that's absolutely fine. I will do my best to spot them. Otherwise, feel free to interrupt me and ask any questions that you do have. So, okay. Has the system come through for you?
Yes, we're seeing that now.
Yeah, brilliant. So what I'll do then is a bit of an introduction to the system. I will take you through just the basics in terms of the navigation. So we'll start at the shallow end, as it were, and some of the help features as well. So this is more or less what you should see when you do get logged in. If you're all admin users and all multi-site users, which I'm presuming you are, because that's why you're on the call, it will be very, very similar to this. The first thing to check is that you've got your name right in the top right-hand corner, and then you've got the trust in the top left corner there. You've got your main menu on the left-hand side, which enables you to navigate throughout the entirety of the system. And what we'll be focusing on this morning is the multi-site area, as well as some of the stuff at property level as well. So to access the property level menus, you would go to the select property option and then choose a property from the list here. Some interesting properties there. As I say, we'll get into the property level a little bit later on anyway and take you through some of that. But as multi-site users, you have access to, as I say, all areas really. So certainly for most of the management of your compliance related activities and kind of an overview of your contracts and some of your issues across the whole trust, that will be within your multi-site area. If you want more detail and to manage those activities, sign them off and log issues, as well as to update contracts and renew them and all that kind of stuff, which I'll take you through. That's within your property level, which you'll find under the select property option from the home button down. And what we'll be focusing on predominantly this morning is the compliance area within multi-site, the issues area, as well as contracts. And I'll explain a little bit more about what they all mean later on. And then within the property level area, it'll be the business management module. And within there, we've got activities, issues, and contracts, which are the sort of equivalent of those multi-site modules. What you will find in a lot of the menus, as admin users, you've got access to your settings at the bottom, particularly within property level. At multi-site, it is all generally just settings and high-level reporting, but certainly for within the property level menus, it can vary quite significantly depending on the module you're looking at and the user level you are. But you will all have access to the settings area as admin users. Then you've got your reporting facilities in the middle, and then you've got kind of the nitty-gritty towards the top. So that's where you'd be able to manage your activities, for example, from the summary area and add and create them as well. Similarly, within some of the other modules, as I say, you've got settings again. That enables you to customize the module for use at your school. So it might not be relevant for you guys if you're not necessarily at school level, but certainly for those colleagues that are managing issues or activities at school level, then you've got your settings there. Yeah, sorry, John, I can see you've got your hand up.
So can I clarify, please? So an activity is an instruction to somebody to do something. It is go and check something and record you've done the check. That's what we refer to as an activity.
It is, yeah. I will explain that a little bit later on. Okay. But yeah, an activity is your compliance items basically. So it's anything that happens on a regular basis, whether it be daily, once every 2 weeks, or once every 10 years, for example. But yeah, it's your planned maintenance basically, and then your issues is your reactive maintenance. But yeah, no, good question. I will, as I say, explain a little bit more about each of the modules later on. But yeah.
Sorry, Mike, I've just got a quick question. I'm just looking at my menu on the left-hand side.
Yeah.
And it's different to the one that you've got for John.
Okay.
So it basically doesn't have the business bits.
Okay.
It's got multi-site at the top.
Yeah.
Same as that. And then it's got summary underneath it, where it's got global search, issues, contracts, documents, risk.
Do you have the select property option?
No.
You don't?
I have at the bottom, actually.
Okay. Yeah, if you select that, and then you'll be given a list of schools that you have access to, and then if you click on one of those, you'll be able to access then the property level menu. Is that coming up for you?
Okay, yep, I'm
Yeah.
with you now. Yep.
Cool. Yeah, no worries. So yeah, it's just because you have access to the two sides of the system. So you've got your multi-site area, which is at the top. That's kind of what it defaults to when you get logged in. And then if you want to go to the individual property, you need to select it from the list, really. So
Okay.
perfect. So as I say, I'll do a bit of an introduction to the modules as well a little bit later on. But in terms of the navigation, it takes time to get used to, but you will find that a lot of the modules are very similar in terms of their layout. They're designed for different purposes, but in terms of how they work, they are fairly similar. You'll find the options on the left-hand side are more or less reflected along the top as well. So you can see you've got add activities there. That's the same option along the top. And then you've got create activity, same as the option on the left-hand side. What you will find within the horizontal menu, though, is a reports button. For you guys, certainly, I guess reporting is going to be fairly important. I'll show you some of the high level reports that are available at multi-site, but at single site as well, or at property level, you've got this reports button, which enables you to extract the information you can see on the page. So I'll show you a few examples of those a little bit later on, but if you do need to download any of the information that you can see on the system, then it's a case of using those reports buttons. If you need to hide the main menu, it's just a case of clicking the little arrow up there, and then you can navigate using the pop-outs, as you can see. You can use it on any device, so as long as you can log in one place, you should be able to log in pretty much anywhere. Just bear in mind you might have single sign-on and all that kind of stuff. So you can use it on a smartphone. It's a browser-based system, so feel free to log in. Whether it be Chrome or Firefox or Safari, it should work for you as long as it's up to date. There are a couple of apps available. It's really only for property level, though. You can't necessarily manage stuff at multi-site level using the apps. I mean, you can in a roundabout way, but within business management, we've got an app for both activities and issues. If you're interested, I can send you some information on those. But for everything else, it would just be using the desktop. You can use your normal backwards and forwards buttons on your browsers you'd expect to be able to. Just bear in mind, if you are editing stuff on a page, do click the save or submit buttons where you see them. It is by design that it doesn't save as you go along. So it's just getting into the habit, really, of clicking those save or submit buttons. And I'll show you a few examples of those a little bit later. Okay. So that is a very brief kind of whistle-stop tour of the system. We'll get a little bit more used to how it works as well when we get into the multi-site area very shortly. But what I'll do now is just take you through some of the help features that are available. So the first thing we recommend you use is the Every Live chat. And that is available in the bottom right-hand corner of any screen. So it's also available on the login screen, any screen you're looking at, basically. So if you are having difficulties logging in, you can't reset your password or anything like that, you can use it there. Again, feel free to use me today for any questions you have. There's no such thing as a stupid question. That applies to the live chat as well. You are talking to a real support team. I say real, I don't know what the alternative would be. It wouldn't pretend support team. You are talking to a human when you use the live chat, not an AI chatbot. I suppose that's what I mean. So, before AI takes over the world, our support team do still have their jobs. If you do have any questions, please do pop them in there. The response times are usually a matter of seconds, if not, a couple of minutes if we're a little bit busy. But just pop your question in there straight away, they'll be able to get that answer for you very quickly. And you can ask for an email transcript of that conversation. And the subject line of that email will be formed by whatever it is you put in there initially. So just put any question in there straight away. Helps us to help you as well. Okay. So that's your help centre. It's available Monday to Friday, 8 till 5. Outside of those hours, any questions you leave with us will come through via email and we'll get back to you via email. What we also have, if you look to the left of your username, is the help button, and that enables you to access the help center. And what you've got in there is a list of web-based articles. and they explain how to use a particular feature or a particular part of the system. And a lot of the time as well, there'll be videos in there to help you. So the videos are usually a couple of minutes long at most. And hopefully that will be sufficient to explain that feature for you. There will be text and images, as you can see here, to help out as well. And what you'll see within that help center is only articles that are relevant for that part of the system you're looking at. So we're in the property level business management module at the moment and the activities area. So we're only seeing stuff that's relevant for that. But if we go to issues, for example, you will see that you've got a few less in there because it's automatically got them filtered for you. So you'll only see stuff that's relevant to that page. You can also send the support team an email from here. That will just open up in your default email software. And we've got a phone number as well. And that goes straight through to our support team. And again, that's available Monday to Friday, 8 till 5. Last but not least, we've got a feedback option as well. If you do have any feedback on the system specifically, whether it be any constructive criticism, any feature requests you want to make, or suggest any design improvements, for example, if it's not formatting particularly well on the device that you're using, any reports you feel could be improved. It doesn't matter whether it's trivial, we want to know about any feedback you have, regardless of how trivial you think it is. That is how we improve as a software provider. I mean, hopefully there won't be anything major, but any feedback you have, please do let us know. If it's something you feel we can offer a workaround on, please do use the live chat and we can see what we can suggest. But again, please do use the feedback. It goes straight through to our development team, and it will raise a ticket on their system. And they do look at every bit of feedback that comes through, and they will look at building it into a future release if enough people have submitted the same or similar requests, and it therefore will be escalated. You can put War and Peace in there. It's completely up to you. It is a free text field. And then, as I say, just make sure when you're done, you do click the submit or save buttons. Okay, so that is a bit of a whistle-stop tour of the system. Just before we get into multi-site, are there any questions at this point from anyone? Okay. As I say, if you do have any at any point, please do feel free to interrupt me. So we'll start off then at multi-site. I'm just going to check something quickly. As I say, I do unfortunately just have one screen this morning, because I'm tucked away in a little cubby hole in the office. So I'm just going to double check something on the spreadsheet because there was a specific plan that Laura wanted me to cover. So yeah, so we'll start off with the multi-site. I'm guessing none of you have added any activities or anything like that. You're brand new to the multi-site area, is that right?
Yes.
I think that's broadly correct. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Perfect. So start off then with compliance setup. So the best place to start really is going to be your setup area. It looks like a lot of it has been done already. So compliance is it's the equivalent of activities at property level. So John's question earlier was, what is activities? It's in relation to your compliance, or it's any regular jobs that need carrying out at property level, whether they be statutory in relation to legislation, or it's, any nice to haves. So for example, you've got a few here, which would give you an idea of how it's going to be used across the trust. So you've got asbestos related activities, you've got emergency lighting tests, water checks. There's various things in here, and the way they're set up in here is that they are copied out to your schools, to your properties. Not necessarily all of them, maybe some of them, because some of them might not be relevant for all of them. But what they will be able to do at property level is confirm that they've completed those activities, add evidence that they've done so, whether that be any paperwork or anything like that. And what they can also do at the same time is raise any issues or any reactive or remedial maintenance that needs carrying out in relation to activities that have been completed. Question from yourself, John.
Yeah, the priority and category columns, are
Yeah.
those headings, so preventative plan maintenance, regulatory compliance, statutory compliance, are those titles that have been allocated by us, the user of the system, or are those pre-built headings?
So they are all custom, so they
Right.
would have been added by someone else that's set
Okay.
it up. So I'll show you where we set that up within here as well. It's just within the setup area. But yeah, that's all within here. Um, so I don't know if there will be any more activities that need to be added, but certainly if you do want to change any of those priorities and categories at any point, you do have the option to do that within here. As multi-site users, you can do that. So, but yeah, they're all custom options. So we'll have a little look at how to actually add an activity within here a little bit later on, but that's just a few examples in there of those kind of activities that are expected to be carried out across the trust. As I say, we'll come back to looking at how to actually set up an activity in a moment or two, but I'll just go through the rest of the tabs before we do that. So your priorities, as you can see there, that just enables you to kind of categorize your activities really in terms of what priority they take. So you've got statutory, regulatory, and preventative plan maintenance. A lot of the time that will just be high, medium, and low. But as I say, you can customize those, and they have been customized. So this will affect how they appear on your matrices and any reporting, and also at property level, they will see, what priority that activity belongs to. Next tab you've got is the compliance matrix parameters. So what you can do in here is customize how the matrix will appear based on, whether an activity is overdue. And when it's overdue, that's based on the due date that you've set for an activity. It will make a little bit more sense when we look at the matrix itself. But what you do in here is basically customizing the red, amber, green, or the RAG colors. So for example, if an activity is due today or it's overdue, that cell in the matrix, which I will show you later on, will be red. If the activity is due within the next month or so, you've got 30 days in there, it will appear amber. And everything else that's due sort of within 31 days and beyond will appear green on the matrix. And your matrix enables you to get high-level reports across the whole trust. So you can see at a glance what activities are overdue, again, based on that due date. And so those colors will help you to see that straight away.
And will it tell you whether something's been booked in for that? So if it's during the next month, will you be able to go, oh, that's fine, it's it's been scheduled, or will it just tell you need to be aware of that?
It will tell you the due dates within the matrix as well. So it will have those listed for you. Is that what you mean?
No, so say it's during the next month,
Yeah.
and the site has phoned up and scheduled that in, so that we know that it's actually happening. Is there
Sure.
any way of being able to say it's due but it's happening, or it's due but it's not been booked yet?
The short answer to that is no. It's basically the reporting here is just on the due dates themselves. Whether they're booked in or not is another matter. So it's the reporting here is purely just based on the due dates that have been set. So those are your compliance matrix parameters. As I say, you can customize those at any point. As admin users, you can change these, but they have already been set up. I'll show you a little bit more about what they do when we get into the matrix itself in a little while. You've got your categories next, and that enables you to pop your activities into particular categories and filter based on those categories. You can also set up user permission, so you can restrict certain categories from certain users. And it does enable consistency across the trust as well. So for instance, you would have the fire category available at all of your trusts, and activities will be accordingly added to that fire category. So it looks like a lot of it has already been set up, to be honest. If you do need to create any categories, what you can do within here, if you right click on activity categories and then create, you would just pop in the name of the category in there. So, it might be health and safety or premises or whatever it is you need to create as an activity category, you can do so. Just make sure you click save once that's done. As you can see, there's also subcategories as well. So if you did want to create a subcategory, you can right click on the parent one and then create, and that will then, whatever you put in there will create a subcategory within there. Once you have created those, they will need to be mapped down to your relevant schools if you want that category to also be, say, consistent across the trust. So once you've created, for example, your emergency lights, under your mapping setup, this has already been done, so we don't need to worry about this one. But if it was a brand new category, you would have your, 18 properties within here, and you select which ones this category is going to be relevant for. It doesn't necessarily matter too much, to be honest, particularly at multi-site, because you kind of got categories that are already there and they will see what categories they belong to as multi-site activities. It just means that, if they wanted to add their own activity to emergency lights, you could kind of report on it as well at multi-site. They can also add their own categories within property level as well, but it just enables that consistency really. So emergency lights is a category at all of these properties, and you can remove them if you need to, where you've got the red cross. We'll see a little bit more about how that works as well when we come to actually create an activity in a second. But those are your categories. We will come on to the mapping again a little bit later when we look at what happens once we've created an activity. The last tab you've got within the setup area is your checklist templates. So what you can do when you're setting up an activity is create a checklist. So rather than, maybe you've got one sort of master job and there's various different jobs that need to be completed within that, or maybe it's like your call point checks, or your security walk around, could be as simple as toilet checks, anything like that. What you can do is create a checklist, and then whoever's completing that activity will be presented with that checklist, and they can go through on the system itself and tick off, depending on how you've set it up, they can tick off certain checks within the checklist itself. They can also add information in like a free text field as well. So if you want to use it like that, you do have the option to do so. So you've got a couple of examples in here already. So you've got your cold water tank inspection. So we can just have a quick look at this one. If you do need to create one from scratch, if you go to add checklist, you'll be given a template to fill in. What we'll do is just quickly have a look at one of these existing ones so you get an idea of how it's going to work. So what you do is you'd be given this page. It will have basically all blank fields in, and you would then just add in whatever kind of checklist it is you want to do. And then you've got the questions here already. It's good to actually see one that's being used, because I've only ever used my examples before, because it's a new feature that we've recently built into compliance. So it's not necessarily been rolled out across many trusts yet, but this is the kind of thing that you can do with it. So you've got your actual check items here, and you can customize the kind of responses you want to give as well. So in this case, it's a text response, so that will generate like a free text field. So they would need to say, yes or no, and actually type it in. But what you can do is select a response being a checkbox, and you can create your own custom responses as well. For example, there's numerous options in here. I'm not going to have time to run through absolutely everything. The world's your oyster, really. It can be as flexible as you want it to be. People do like this feature, and they were asking for it before it was built in. So hopefully it's going to work for you. If you do have any feedback on it, we do welcome it. There are a few improvements coming to it in a future release as well. So in advance of that, please do offer some feedback if you have any. But you can spend hours in here setting this up if you wanted to. It's completely up to you how you use it. What you can do as well is add further pages in. Your options are pretty limitless, really. So there are some guide. Yeah, sorry.
Could
Go on.
you use this as an audit document?
Yep, so there are reports available on this. Again, this is a feature that is being improved in a future release. So at the moment, what we recommend doing once you've completed the checklist is to download it and print it off. But in a future release, which I can't tell you exactly when it's coming, but you will be able to see all previous checklists when they've been completed soon. But at the moment, once that checklist is completed, we recommend downloading it, saving it as a PDF. There is always an audit trail as well. So anytime you complete an activity, there will be a full audit trail. So you'll see anytime a checklist is completed. And as I say, in future, there will be the option to see the actual answers that were provided when that checklist was completed as well.
Can I ask, please, about the checklist? Is if in this example there's a checklist created around checking of cold water tanks,
Sure.
that checklist then is fixed for anybody who is allocated that activity, or can the checklist be tailored to a site?
So you would need to create separate checklists on a site-by-site basis.
And would that therefore require you to create separate activities per site?
Yes, if you wanted to do it that way, you would need to create separate activities. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of possible alternative way of doing it, but yeah, because you can add more than one checklist to an activity, but it would still, you'd still need to potentially, that would just cause confusion, I think. So yeah, it would be a better idea to create a separate activity on a school by school basis. So okay, any other questions at all on the checklist setup? Okay. One idea actually that has just popped into my head is we do have the logic option. I don't want to necessarily play with this one because it is a potentially live checklist. I won't save it. There is the logic option, but I wouldn't. That might just cause a little bit too much confusion in terms of the setup. So I think personally at the moment it would just be a case of setting up different activities. Because you could, for example, within here, if you had your question, at what school is this checklist being carried out? You could then have the logic based on the answer that's provided and then have subsequent questions from that. But I think that's probably just going to be a little bit too much work, to be honest. So yeah, it's probably worth having separate checklists for different schools. So
and sorry, Mike, so the reporting of checklists, so if a checklist is completed against as the output of an activity, you have to complete the checklist. So I complete the checklist, and that will somehow, by clicking submit or save, I will close that activity. It will record the fact I've done it. Is it possible to report on individual questions within a checklist? Because somebody could report the fact I've completed my cold water storage tank checklist, but the temperature was not below 20 degrees.
Sure.
Is it possible to pull out that information somehow, or does the system simply record the fact the activity has been completed?
So at the moment, what we'd recommend doing once that checklist is completed is actually downloading that report and saving it somewhere. You maybe attach it to the activity itself, which I'll show you how to do. In the future, you will be able to report on all questions that were answered anytime that checklist was completed and see that information. What you can also do, if, for example, the water temperature wasn't where it should be, you could create an issue on that particular item. I'll show you how that works later on. Okay. But you could create an issue which would mean that remedial work needs to be carried out or something needs to be investigated. So that's another way of flagging out problems that occur when you complete a checklist. So sorry, Stephen, I could see you popped your hand up. Did you still have a question?
Yeah, I do. So on the site that I work at, there's multiple tanks.
Sure.
So can you have a checklist per tank, or
so
if I'm reading this right, this is a checklist that does the overall activity, not the specific?
Sure. So this is just one example of the kind of checklist you could have on the system. If you wanted to do if you want it to be a bit more specific, you could add different sections. So you could have, better than me, and then have the different questions within there. And you can add as many as you need, basically. So you can have different sections within the same checklist.
Yeah.
It really is as flexible as you want it to be, and it's up to you, to be honest, how you use it. If you want those separate checklists for different sites, again, that's kind of what I'd recommend. But if it was just for one site and there were various different, areas within there that you needed to cover within the checklist, it's worth having the sections. But it's honestly up to you how you use it. It's whatever you feel is the best way to do it, really. You can also set like mandatory questions as well. So, they would need to provide some kind of answer. If you select the required option, that means that question is mandatory. So, as I say, we could honestly spend all day looking at the checklist. There's some resources as well, but yeah, it's completely up to you how you use it. If you do get stuck at any point, please do use the live chat. They can help you out with the checklist as well. As I say, it is a new feature, so any feedback you do have, please do let us know. Has that helped, Stephen?
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. No
I think
worries.
we need to have a conversation with Mr. Wolford, don't we, Stephen?
Yeah, I think there's a bit more meat on the bone there that needs to be put into this. I've not seen this section before. This is new to me.
Right. Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's why I asked the question. But
sure.
I think looking at this, yeah, it's workable. We just need to put the information into it to be able to get it back out again.
Sure. Yeah. It is a new feature, as I say. It was released in March, so yeah, a lot of people haven't seen it yet. But the people that have seen it, they do really like it so far. Although it is a lot of work to get it set up. Once it's done, it'll you'll be ready to rock and roll, really. So you have all the information you need in one place. Okay. Any other final questions on the spreadsheet? Checklist at all?
No.
No. Okay. Clearly got spreadsheets on the brain. Sad life I lead. So I will not save that one. But if you do need to add, as I say, you can add as many as you need within the templates. And then what you do when you set up the activities, you would choose from your list of checklists you've got in here. So if you've got ones for different sites, if you give that title, put the site name and the title or description or whatever, that just makes life a little bit easier when you're searching for those checklists. Okay, so the next thing to look at is how to actually set up an activity within here. So if you come down to create compliance item, and that's just within the activity compliance items tab, you've also got the option up here as well. What you need to do is fill in the blanks, basically. So what you're doing here is you're describing to the system the kind of activity you want to add, that you want to be relevant to all of your schools. Well, not necessarily all of them, but at least some of them. So does anyone have an idea of a activity we could add at central level? That I'm not going to add it, don't worry. So I won't save it unless you want me to. But does anyone have any ideas of an activity we could add, just as an example?
Let's do site security.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you, John. So we just, as I say, just fill in the blanks. You've got your mandatory fields, so you've got your title, description. Well, they're actually all mandatory here, but it won't let you save it without completing those. Then you've got your priority. So I don't know which one it would come under, but it's just making sure you choose the appropriate one. You can always change that anyway down the line if you need to. If you add any additional categories, you can always change those. So got security in there. Just put it in a random one. Just put it in there. Just put that one. How often is this carried out? Would you say normally?
Yeah, leave it at a month.
A month, yeah. What you can do as well is if you want to have full control over the due dates for that activity, you can control that by ticking this box here. If you leave it unticked, it will enable the schools themselves or the properties themselves to add in their own due dates for this activity. So that just enables a little bit more flexibility. You know, for example, if an activity is going to coincide with a school holiday, they can say, actually, this isn't going to work for us. We can put it back or bring it forward a little bit. So is that something you feel you'd want to manage at site property level, or you want to be able to have full control over that at central level?
So if the date is managed by the MAT, managed
Yeah.
centrally,
Mhm.
that means the site can't do the check early.
They could still do it early, yeah, but they couldn't change the next due date, for instance, based on if they had done it early. So if it was
Okay.
carried out sort of once a month, if they did it sort of, I don't know, 5 weeks in advance, the next due date will be exactly how you've said it in here. But you could still change it yourself if you wanted to.
Okay.
So it could depend on the kind of activity it is, really. It's, you know, it's up to you. So it's just something to think about, really. You can, as I say, you can kind of change it as you go through using the system. Okay. So those are the basic details. In terms of the frequency as well, you can set any number of days, weeks, months, or years. So as I say, you can make any kind of frequency you want. It could be daily stuff. Could be, as I say, once every 15 years. You know, it's as flexible as you need it to be. And again, you can change that as well at any point. Once a month in there. Okay. So once you've added your basic details in there, just make sure you click save. At this point, I'll go into one of your existing activities and look at how that works once you've clicked the save button. So if you just bear with me 1 second, I'm going to pop into see one that isn't mapped, maybe. I think they probably all are. Okay, we'll use this one because it's only been mapped to one school. So once you've set that up and you've clicked the save button, as you can see there, you've got the basic details, very similar for all activities, and you can change any of that. You would then need to map it down to the relevant schools. So it doesn't have to be all of them. And again, on the back of your question earlier, John, it could be if you've got checklists for a particular site, it would only be relevant probably for one school. But what you're doing in here is you're selecting the schools that you want to copy this activity to. So if you've just created it as a fresh activity, you'll have tick boxes in here, like you can see for this particular one. And then you would select the schools it's relevant for, and then create it as a new activity. If it isn't relevant for that school, you can just mark it as not applicable so that they're aware that that activity is not applicable. If they come across any, reporting, they can see that they don't need to worry about that particular activity. So this particular one is only relevant for Camp Beaumont warehouse, and it's been mapped to that one. So that's the next step. And it is an important step to do just to make sure it has been mapped out properly. At this point, I'll just pop into my test system quickly and show you the options that come up when you do actually copy it down. Because what you can do is you can customize who it's assigned to, you can customize the due dates on a school by school basis. But just before I do that, are there any questions at all on the initial stages of setting up an activity at multi-site level?
I think it raises lots of questions for us internally about how we use the system, but not in terms of the functionality of it.
Okay, yeah, sure. No worries.
Hi,
Yeah.
Mike. It's Dean here. I'm driving, so I don't know if you can hear me very well. I am listening and taking everything in. Just a quick question from me about the RAG rating. You said obviously like it's red if you've got to do it in a week, it's amber if it's in a month, and then it's green if it's above a month, pretty much, right?
Yeah.
If they don't hit the deadline, so say it goes under or minus, so they pass the deadline, does it show up different? I don't know if you said this already, so I do apologise. Does it show up differently on the screen? Will we get automated emails or messages to say that they've not achieved the task by their deadline or not at all?
So everyone that an activity is assigned to will receive emails on a weekly basis, just outlining those activities which are up and coming within the next couple of weeks. For yourselves, on the basis of your settings, within the compliance setup, what you'd usually have is anything that is due either today or it's overdue will be red on the matrix. So you can kind of see that at a glance. So on your system, yeah, it's anything that is overdue or it's due today will appear red, and then anything that is due within the next month, like you say, will be amber. So anything that is overdue will appear red on the matrix. So you'll be able to see straight away that that's an activity that they haven't completed. And again, they will get those reminders through, and they'll continue to receive those reminders until it's completed. So I always say every knows everything. It reports on all of that for you straight away as soon as it's as soon as that date comes around, basically. So yeah, does that help?
Yeah. So basically, they get automated emails telling them
Yeah.
the most upcoming tasks they need to complete.
Yeah.
So if it's not been done in time, they still get reminded about it until it's
Exactly.
done, basically.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Pretty
Thank you very
much.
much.
Okay, no worries. Okay. So what I'll do, as I say, is just pop into my system quickly and just show you a few other bits and bobs in terms of the setup of those activities. Just bear me 1 second. So my system works in exactly the same way, but I'm just going to quickly show you a few things that unfortunately I can't show you on yours. So I'm just going to do site security. Just bear me 1 moment. It's a month. That. So I'm going to make this relevant for all of my properties. So under the mapping setup, I've ticked all of them and then create new activity within here. And then I can choose the category that it's relevant for. Because I mapped these categories out already, they should be consistent. I can set the due date. This will be like the overall due date, but I can later on customize it on a school by school basis. And then I can assign them to different owners as well, which is going to be users at the particular school. So we'll save that. And we can see now it has been copied out and it's confirmed other mapped activities. If we do want to customize the due dates on a school by school basis, we can tick the options within here under mapped activities and then edit the details, add in a different due date, for example, for that particular school. And any of the other details as well. Oh, deliberate error. Any of the other details as well. If we want to customize the title and description and how often it's due for that particular school as well, we can. So you've got all that flexibility within here. And then lastly, you've got the option to add your checklists. So once you've created them within the setup area, it's just a case of, and it'll be the list that you have on yours that you would choose from. As I say, you can add multiple ones. The options you can see for mandatory and autocomplete on the back of your question earlier, John, if you do select autocomplete, it will complete the activity for you. As I say, at the moment, I'd probably recommend having that off just because you might want to access the checklist and download the report before you complete the activity, or maybe there's additional issues that need raising. But if you do want to enable that at any point, you can. If you enable the mandatory option as well, it means that checklist needs to be completed before the activity can be completed. So just pop mine in there. Save that. As I say, you can add multiple checklists if you need to as well. Particularly if you've got two checklists, be a good idea to keep autocomplete off. Okay, so that is the gist of setting up an activity at multi-site level. Any other questions at this point at all?
Sorry, Mike, can I return to the checklist then? So if a checklist has been added to an activity and essentially comprises the tasks that are required within that activity, to complete this activity, you need to answer the following questions on the checklist.
Sure, yeah.
Is it the intention, or is it is the functionality within the system to complete that checklist online that you will go through and you'll tick yes and no and you'll add your text fields in?
Yeah.
So when you refer to downloading that report prior to closing the activities and so on,
Sure.
are you suggesting that you have to have a sort of a physical printed copy of that in order to scan it and upload it as evidence of the completion of that activity, or have I missed something there?
No, it's a good question. Just because, as I say, it is a new feature at the moment, and not all of it has been sort of fully rolled out yet. It's a bit of a workaround at the moment, just because you can't necessarily access any previously completed checklists on the system itself. You know, anytime a new activity comes around, that old checklist is no longer available. So as a workaround at the moment, it's just a case of saving it, for example, as a PDF. You don't have to print it off. Save it as a PDF and then attach it to the activity. As I say, it is a workaround, so I appreciate it's not ideal, but I can show you how that works when we look at the property level stuff in a moment or two. But yeah, it's in as I say, it is released into a test release of the system, so it will be released into a public release for compliance, where you will be able to access all previously completed checklists and see them within the system. So.
Right. And it's not at the moment, but do you foresee that being able to report against individual questions in the checklist might be something that's sort of in the roadmap for this?
Yeah, that should all be in there in the reports that are, you know, released when they release it. So you will see all of those questions that they've answered, and any issues that have been raised as well. So, and
Right.
any sort of paperwork or whatever that they've added when they've completed the checklist.
So as somebody who is potentially responsible for more than one site, I would at some point in the future hopefully be able to ask the question, which of my cold water tanks across my 10 sites are not recording temperatures below 20 degrees, for example. I don't care about vermin screens and whether the water's clean. I'm just interested in that temperature question.
Okay.
I will be able to drill down to that level of detail at some point.
You should be able to, yeah. So, as I say, that is coming. I can't tell you exactly when, but I have been told it is built into a test version of the system. So, watch this space. Okay, no worries. Any other questions at all on the compliance setup area? Okay, perfect. So that is the gist of it, really. In terms of setting up your compliance activities, as I say, we will go to the property level view in a moment or two. In terms of your reporting within here, I'll just pop back into your system. If I'm in your system, it's in the turquoise or aquamarine, whatever color this is, and mine is the black window that we're using here. So I will tell you if we need to switch to my system. We'll look at the compliance matrix next. So in answer to a few of your questions, if you do need reports on any activities in terms of where they are, you know, if they're overdue, or as you can see there, they're due within the next month or so, and then everything else is going to be green for you. So you can see everything at a glance. You can also download this. It is also available in Excel format, so you can download it. You can click into any of those activities, you know, via the cells. So it'll take you straight to this overdue one at Skern Lodge, for instance. You can see who it's assigned to from there. There are various other reports I'll show you. But it gives you that high level reporting and the option to access various different parts of the system as well.
So if they've already booked in the catering equipment service, whereabouts would it say that?
In terms of booking in, is that?
Yeah, so it's due on the 20th of so it appears that it was due on the 20th of April, but for whatever reason they've booked it in for tomorrow.
Sure. So if they have the option to, they can change the due date if they want at school level, or what I suggest in that case is kind of adding in information into the comments. So booked in. So if you maybe want that due date to reflect when it's actually booked in, then as I say, they do have the option to change it. Otherwise, if you want them to be, if you want to maintain that compliance based on that due date, any other information in relation to when it's actually booked in, I'd suggest using the comments box.
So this relates back to what you were saying earlier about whether or not the due date is controlled by the MAT centrally.
Yeah.
So in this particular example, although it was due on the 20th of April 2023, if it doesn't happen until the 28th of June, then logic would suggest the next one isn't due until the 28th of June 2024 to maintain our 12-monthly interval.
Yeah.
Or we can fix that and say, no, it has to be done by the 20th of April 2024 as well.
Yeah,
Right.
so when you're completing it, you've got various options you can choose from. So it can, if it's like significantly overdue, you're right, the next due date might be even further away. But if you want that sort of concrete, rigid date in there, you would need to kind of, I would suggest, manage that at trust level. But based on the due date you've selected here, it will give you the next due date, which, as you say, if we're completing it today, will be exactly a year from today. But they can add their own due date in, because that's how this one is set up. So
but if that tick box on setting up the activity was selected so that the due date is only controllable by the MAT, then that option about next due date wouldn't appear.
It would, well, it would be grayed out, so they wouldn't be able to
Okay.
change it. So yeah,
Right.
so that would be something that they would see, but you would be able to control.
Right.
So yeah, it's just being mindful of how that works, really. So whenever they complete that due date in there, whether it's overdue or not, it will just give them exactly, whether it be a year or a month from now. But it's just being mindful. As I say, they can choose any next due date in there.
So sorry, if an activity is set up as being an annual occurrence, presumably the system won't let them choose a next due date, which is 13 months in the future.
If you have given them the option to select their own due dates, they can basically select any. It does give them that option. They can select any date in there. So that's why there is that option to manage it at trust level.
Right.
So it wouldn't necessarily be exactly, like you say, it could be 13 months, it could be 11 months away.
Right.
I mean, it just depends on, hopefully everyone's going to be compliant and completing stuff on time.
But the colourful compliance matrix grid that we saw earlier, showing all the red, amber, green due dates, that will be calculated based on the due date, the next due date that
Exactly.
I, as the site operative, type into here.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay. Perfect. Lovely. So yeah, any dates you see in here, exactly as you say, they are set based on the due date that is within that field. And again, it's just those parameters as well that are affecting how it appears in terms of the red, amber, green, and so on. Okay. You've also got the performance dashboard. So this is just a different way of reporting on that information, really. So any overdue stuff is in red, and that's across the whole trust. It's a nice pie chart there, mostly green. But if you click into those red segments, for instance, it's going to take you straight to those overdue activities. You can see the property it's assigned to. And if you click on the pencil, it will take you to the activity as well. So again, this is an example of one where the due date is set at trust level. So that is grayed out. Okay.
And is it possible to filter these tasks according to who it's assigned to? Because there'll be a basic distinction between those that are assigned to the site team to manage and those that are assigned to the central team to manage. I don't want to get too excited about reds if they're not assigned to me.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. So you've always got these filters like you see within Excel. Sometimes you can filter the columns. So you can filter based on who it's assigned to. For example, if you pop a name in there. Right. So.
And that can be literally assigned to anything. I could write the word site or central in there.
So
does it have to be an individual?
It would be an individual. It'll be a user on the system.
Right.
But if you're like a site team, you might be a standard user. and you could have, all members of your site team as standard users, and they can access any of those activities that are relevant for them, if that makes sense. But it would need to be assigned to just one individual. But it could be that more than one individual has access to the activity. So, okay. So there's various options within here. As I say, you can access any of those segments. You've got another matrix down here. If you want to download any of these charts, you've got the option to do that as well. If you click on the context menu, you can download them as images, for instance. And then you've got the reports button at the top, which enables you to actually have all that information for you on one page. So compliance by category, for instance, just gives you that, but in Word format. So as you can see there. So wherever you see that reports button as well, it will enable you to download what you can see on the page. So you don't have to faff around trying to get those individual charts off. It's already there for you. And then you've got compliance by property. So very similar information, but it just gives you a breakdown of each property in terms of how compliant they are. So you can see everything at a glance there as well. So it's all looking good for you. I've seen a lot worse. So that's the gist of your compliance at multi-site. I haven't gone through absolutely everything, but that's mostly what you'll be sort of getting used to on a day-to-day basis, because we do have a lot to cover this morning. But are there any other questions at all on what we've covered so far? No. Okay. As I say, don't forget to use the help center. There will be, sometimes there won't be stuff in there, but depending on the part of the system you're looking at, there will be some articles in there to help you out. So for instance, there is stuff about the checklist. Actually, I think the checklists are at property level. So there's a setup area within property level. I think some of those, because they have been updated recently, will include information about the checklist. If not, that's available at property level within business management activities. But please do refer to those help center articles if you need to. Okay, so just bear with me 1 second, because I am just going to check the spreadsheet again. So if you've got any questions, if you want to think of them now, then let me know. But just bear with me 1 moment. Check. Okay, it's a very kind of specific agenda, so just bear with me. So I think actually what we should do now is look at the property level and how to, well, we've already briefly looked at how to complete an activity, but I'll just do a quick refresher on that, and then we'll look at the issues and contracts and suppliers, and then we'll pop back into multi-site and look at the reporting for that. Okay. So, spell me. Going to activities then at property level, and really it's just to show you how you complete it. And I know we've already done that, but there's just a few little bits and bobs I will show you on there. So, for example, was there a particular school that you wanted me to use as an example this morning, or does it not matter?
Doesn't really matter, Mike.
No. Okay. I'll use the is it Bideford bikes? Yeah. I do have a couple of bikes, but they are gathering dust, I have to admit, sadly. Though there's no excuse in this weather. So what I'll do is just pop into one of your activities at property level, and we've already looked at how to complete the due date, but there's just a few other things I'll show you in terms of like how to add evidence and so on, and how you might complete the checklist. So if there was a checklist to complete, you would find that in your checklist tab, and that will appear here for you, and you'll have like a little pencil icon, and then you'll be given those responses to complete. So just popping into my test system again. Just trying to remember where I do have checklists. Few on mine. And again, it's not necessarily representative, it's just how I've kind of set mine up. So just trying to remember, I think cool point checks. Sure that one does. Yeah, so if there's a checklist, that will appear under your checklist tab, and then you would just access it via the pencil. You might need to fill in any basic details that would have been set up within your setup area, and then you'll just be given the kind of responses as well. And again, that's not necessarily how it's going to work for you, because that's just a sort of rough and ready checklist that I set up just to see how it works. But it depends on the kind of responses that you are adding in when you're setting it up. And then, as I say, you can create any issues within the checklist itself, or you can create them within the activity. And I'll show you how to log an issue separately in a moment or two, but it works in exactly the same way. So if there was a problem, I know with your water tanks, as you mentioned, you could log that as an issue. In this case, your cool points, it would be whatever problem might arise with those, and that will log it and link it to the activity. So I'm just going to complete this one. And then, as I say, what we recommend doing at the moment, if you go to view report, is just print it or save it as PDF. As I say, hopefully you won't need to do this for very long. It will be included on the system itself, but just as a matter of course at the moment, if you just save that as a PDF and then upload it to the activity itself, I'll show you that in a second. And then that's that report for you, and you can see then that's done.
Mike, is it possible to partially complete a checklist? A checklist has got 8 questions. I'm going to do 4 of them today, but then I get called away and I have to save my progress and then come back to it tomorrow. Does it support that or not?
I think from memory it does actually. I want to say yes. I'll try and confirm that for you, but I think when I've used it before, it does let you partially save it. Yeah, because I'm sure before I have tried that. I'll confirm that for you.
Okay.
I'll check it again today, but I want to say yes. But let me just, because as I say, they have updated it recently. I'm sure they wouldn't have removed that functionality. But yeah, I will check that for you. So I'm sure you can. You must be able to. As I say, I remember doing it. So I want to say yes, but I'll confirm. So just bear with me 1 second. Partially complete checklist. Brilliant. Okay. So we'll just pop back into the activity. See, it's now completed. We can actually view that report if we click on the eye. It is there at the moment, so we can see it on the system. But as I say, once we've renewed the activity and we've got to complete it again, we won't be able to see that report for now. So. If you do need to have any issues added to an activity, as I say, it can be done when you're completing the checklist, but also within the issues tab. So again, if it's in relation to your water tanks or whatever it is, I won't go through this now because we're going to look at the issues module separately. But you would just create your issue within here, and then you fill in the blanks. If there was an existing issue that you knew was related to the activity, then you can link it using your list of existing issues. It'd just be a case of selecting the relevant tick boxes and then adding it. And you can always remove it as well. Okay. You've got the contracts tab, which we'll come on to. If there is a related contract for the activity, then you can either create it from scratch or again, select from your list. If it was pat testing or grounds maintenance or whatever it is, where you've got a contract on your system, then you can link that to the activity as well. And then lastly, you've got any attached files. So when you're completing the activity under the Update Activity tab, you've got the option to choose file. And then, as I say, at this point, it's probably worth adding the checklist. So it'd just be a case of adding that checklist in. For instance, it's still open because I've not completed it. I'll just pop back into it. And then under your attached files, you'll see that checklist is there. So as I say, that's just a workaround at the moment. Okay. Any questions at all on completing an activity at property level?
No, I think we're all good. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So that's the gist of activities, really. We've looked at it. I mean, to be honest, it's kind of the it is being chucked in at the deep end, really, because compliance and activities is one of the more sort of involved modules. But once you get up and running with it, once you've got your checklist set up and all your activities onto the system and mapped out properly, you should be ready to rock and roll. So certainly, spend time getting your head around it. If you want any resources as well, we can certainly sort that out for you. And please do refer to the help centre and live chat if you do have any questions, or myself, as I say, for the next sort of 20 odd minutes. What we'll do next is just move on to issues. So this is generally done at property level. There isn't a great deal to it at multi-site, but we will pop into that once we've looked at it at property level. It's just the nature of the beast, really. It's your maintenance ticketing system. So any reactive maintenance or any remedial work that needs carrying out in relation to any activities, for example, can be logged within here. So you can see a few examples on here. I'm just going to quickly check on your system. I don't know if it's being used yet, so let me just have a quick look. No, so we'll stick on mine for now. So essentially, anytime an issue is raised, and I'll show you how to do that, it will notify the individual that it's been assigned to. They will receive an email, and it will tell them about this in a very similar way to the activities. Although the activity reminders will come once a week. Anytime an issue is logged, that will come straight away. So they'll be notified within that email, and then when they come onto the system and check under their My Issues tab within the summary area, they can see a list of all of their issues that they've been assigned. So you've got all open issues. Does what it says on the tin. All open issues, regardless of if you're a standard or admin user, you'll see all open issues at your school, at your site, and then you've got all closed issues. It does what it says on the tin. It's all closed issues at your site. So that's going to be your first port of call, really. As I say, if you are part of your maintenance team, and I'll show you some of that high-level reporting at multi-site in a moment. But if you need to log an issue, and anyone can log an issue, I will just pop back into your system because it will have been set up, hopefully, how you want to use it. And so really all it is, again, is filling in the blanks. So, you know better than me the kind of issues that happen on a regular basis. Put as much information as possible within that description field, just helps whoever it is that is receiving that issue. What we'd recommend as well is, particularly as well for you guys, if you're reporting on issues, is to add the location in. You can add it in here, but it is a free text field. So we'd recommend adding the location into your title as well, because it makes life a little bit easier when you're filtering issues and trying to find them and so on.
So as you're logging at the moment, Mike,
Yeah.
you've already sort of clicked into a site in order to raise this issue. You don't
Yeah,
select the
so
site as part of the issue.
so yeah, you only ever do it from the single site level. So I mean, I am in a site, I'm in Bideford, but if you wanted to do it at, you know, if it was at another site where, you know, if you have access to more than one, wherever you log the issue, it will be recorded as logged at that site, if that makes sense.
Right,
So
yeah.
at multi-site level, you'll see how that works. You know, it'll be logged at Overstrand Hall, for example. Overstrand is, I love Overstrand. You'll see that, and you'll be able to filter on that basis, but also any of the other information that you've entered within here as well. So, as I say, the title, just because that location is a free text field, it's open to interpretation. So yeah, as I say, it's just worth putting it in the title as well. But yeah, I'll show you how that works at a multi-site level. And then it's just choosing the appropriate category. And again, that will vary from site to site potentially. And that will also affect who it's assigned to as well. So depending on the category, not always, because it just depends on, you know, maybe Keith is always the assigned to person for any issue, but depending on how it's set up, it will affect who it's assigned to, but you can always change that to anyone else if you need to. You've got your due date, which will always default to today, which clearly most of the time is unrealistic. So it would just be a case of selecting a different due date. But as you know, Keith can always come in and say, no, that due date is not acceptable, and change it himself, you know, to something a little bit more realistic. There will always be an audit trail on the system. So anytime an issue is updated or anything's changed within the issue itself, that will be recorded on the audit trail. And then any files that need to be uploaded as well. Again, it works in exactly the same way as your activities. It's just choosing any files you have on your system. If you're using the apps, it'll be, you know, you could take a photo, for instance, of the issue, and that'll be visible to Keith when he comes and manages it. You can add as many files as you want as well.
So can you take a photograph within the app? Or do you
can,
say
yeah.
You can,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So if you're using a smartphone, as long as it's up to date, smartphone or a tablet, if you've got a camera, it should just, there should be like a little camera icon when you're logging the issue. And yeah, you can then, it will just upload it as an attached file to the issue. So whoever's seeing it, yeah.
If I've got multiple sites that I look after,
Sure.
Can I record on? Can I select a site on the app to say, yeah?
Yeah,
so
you can.
I can put the site on the app and be able to report an incident when I, sorry, an issue when I'm on that site.
Yeah. So, so when you first log into the app, or when you've, you know, access it again, you'll be given a list of sites, and you would just choose the relevant one. So, and go from there.
It's not possible, presumably, to allocate or to raise the same issue at multiple sites in one go. If we've just dissolved somebody in one of our swimming pools, I can't raise an action against all the sites with swimming pools to say, please go and check your chemical levels, for example.
I don't think so. No, I don't think that's possible at the moment. You would need to do separate ones for each site. Yeah.
Right.
But no, I don't think you can. It's worth, that's an example of something you might want to offer as feedback, because I can see, as you say, why that would be useful. So yeah, certainly offer that as feedback. I'll pass it on myself as well. So but yeah, no, it would need to be on each one individually. You can copy issues, but that would only be within a site. I don't think you can copy it out of the site. So yeah, I don't think we can do that yet. So okay. Any other questions at all on logging an issue?
So if I submit this, then presume does Keith at Skern Lodge get an email to say an issue has been logged?
Yeah, if he's got his email notifications enabled, which hopefully he does, then he will get an email straight away saying John has logged this issue at Bideford Bikes. I mean, you know, he will potentially only be there anyway, and it will give some of the details. You know, it should include the title and description, as far as I know, within that email. But then he can just come on there should be a link, as far as I know, within that email, and you can click into the link, and it will take him straight to the system. So,
Right. Okay.
okay. And I'll show you how he can respond to that. Stephen, you had your hand up.
So I've
No.
raised a job and it's
Yeah.
gone out to maintenance.
Yeah.
They've completed the job.
Yeah.
Then do I get an email back to say that it's been completed?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you do. So
okay.
as the person, the logger, or the person that's logging the issue, whatever you want to call it, you will also get updates anytime the issue's updated. Whether that be any responses that are added, any substatuses that are selected, and when it's finally closed as well, you'll get updated at all points. So,
Okay, thanks.
no worries. So in terms of actually responding to an issue, what I'll do again is just pop into my system. So if we were going to be Keith in this case, and we've received the issue about the faulty socket, for example, actually I've used that one a lot, so we'll just use the light switch. We can see all the details in there. As I say, we've got that email now. We know it's been raised. What we could do is add a response within the add response tab. And we've got a couple of ways we can do that. You might have substatuses on your system. So your substatuses enable you to report very quickly on the progress of that issue being resolved. So again, apologies, I know I'm flicking backwards and forwards, but it's just because it's a brand new system, so you don't have substatuses. So what I suggest, I mean, it might be that you will have substatuses at some point, but these on my system, it's just a few examples of the kind of options you could select, because it means you can just very quickly say, issue received and it's being worked on, or you've contacted the supplier, for instance, but I won't dwell on that because you've not got any substatuses. So the thing to use is the response box. So you could just say, once the issue is received, you can actually have auto email set up so that if an issue is logged, you get an auto reply straight away. But you could just say, for instance, simple as that, and then submit response, and that will go to the individual that logged the issue straight away. So in answer to your question, Stephen, I will know straight away. I can see that response. I can also check on my system the issue and see that response has been recorded. So there's no need to. Yeah, sorry.
Mike. One other thing. So
yeah.
I don't know whether it still does, but I know it used to. Say, for example, a window's broken. That's obviously a contractor's going to come in to do that.
Sure.
Does the system still email the contractor?
So if you've got a supplier selected within your suppliers list and they've got an email address, yes, they can be notified, and they can actually kind of respond to the issue as well. So if
do they still need to sign up for it though, or is it an automatic thing now? It goes out.
As long as you've got an email, that it should just go out. They don't need to be signed up. It's like they've got their own kind of issue response portal. They don't need to be registered. So.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
No problem. So when you're finally ready to close an issue, all you need to do is select closed, and then finally add in any additional files, any invoices and all that kind of stuff, and then finally submit that response, and that issue will be closed. If you're not sure what's happened to an issue, you've got your audit trail, so you can check any changes that have been made with regard to that issue.
So this view we're looking at now, Mike, I saw a tab somewhere that said My Issues.
Yeah.
Are those issues that have been assigned to me to resolve, or are there issues which I have raised that I might want to see the progress on, or is it both?
So under your My Issues, it is issues that are assigned to yourself. So if you do want to see any issues that you've logged, it will be under All Open Issues. If you're a standard user, that will also include, if you're standard or admin, that will also include any issues that have been logged by anyone else and assigned to anyone else. But under your My Issues tab, it's just going to be issues that are assigned to you.
So if I'm an admin level, or I'm a multi-site level, all open issues will be just that. It won't just be the stuff that I've raised. It'll be every Tom, Dick
It'll
and
be
Harry's
everything.
list.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But again, you can filter. You've got your
I
filters
can
up
filter by
here.
long by.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, so if you're like a basic user, for instance, you could say my issues and all open issues will be exactly the same, because they'll only see stuff that's assigned to them. But yeah, for yourself as an admin user or standard, you would need to filter if you wanted to see specific issues
Okay.
on that basis. So yeah.
And any of these views here, I seem to remember I can export to Excel if I wish to.
Yeah, so you've got your reports button. There's quite a lot in here, so I won't show you all of them, but yeah, you've got all issues in Excel format, and that enables you to filter again, obviously within Excel, work with the magic of Excel. And yeah, you've got that all there for you. So okay. You can reopen an old issue if you need to. So under all closed issues, if you wanted to reopen an old one, if there was a recurring problem, you know, regular blocked toilet, all that kind of stuff, you can always reopen it as well. And you can always reassign it to different people. There's always that flexibility in there. So just make sure you click submit. Okay. So that is, as I say, not everything, but that's the kind of nitty gritty really for issues at single site. What we'll do next is look at issues at multi-site. Laura did want me to cover contracts as well, which wouldn't take longer than sort of 10 minutes. Are we all okay for time, or
Yeah.
is that okay for everyone? Okay. Perfect. If you do need to drop off, please do. I will send the recording out. But as I say, we will go through contracts to finish off with in a few minutes. So just going into multi-site then for issues. Again, we'll just stick with my system because I don't know if you've got any issues at yours, but it'll give you an idea of how it will look for you. So the gist of it really, you do have your setup area, but the gist of it is your all issues, and this is just your categories. So they are separate to the activities. What you can also do within the issue categories is ensure that a certain individual is assigned to that category, but that would need to be done at property level. So an individual, for example, if you say that it's an IT issue, you know, Tom or Bob or whoever is the IT person at that property, that would need to be set up at property level. But this just enables that consistency across the trust. And again, it works in a very similar way to your activity. So it's just a case of creating a category within here. And you can always change them as well. You can always edit the name and change the mapping too. But other than that, you've got all issues. And again, you can just download it in an Excel format, really. So that's kind of it, to be honest, for multi-site issues. And then you can just see everything within Excel. Just bear with me. So you can filter, you know, based on whether it's completed. You can filter based on the site. So you've got everything you need, hopefully, within there. Any costs as well that are added. So it just pulls that same information that we've just seen on the system itself. Okay. So as I say, really not a great deal to it for the multi-site issues, but it does give you that overall impression of issues across every single site. And you can edit them as well within here. So edit some of the basic details from this area and access them using the pencil icon. Okay. So just before we move on to contracts then, any other questions in relation to issues either at multi-site or property level?
No, all good.
Okie doke. Perfect. So what we'll do next, sorry, I'm just going to quickly check that spreadsheet again. So just bear with me. So I think, yeah, we'll just quickly look at contracts and suppliers, and there's a little bit to go through within the multi-site area for that as well. Yeah, if, as I say, the call is recorded, so if anyone does need to leave, that's absolutely fine. But yeah, thank you for staying if you are. So I will just go into contracts then at property level. I'm just going to check if you do have any. Let's just have a quick look. Nope. So we'll stick with mine. So what contracts enables you to do is manage all your contracts electronically. What that means is managing the terms of the contracts, managing any financial information, managing any related activities, and so on. It is within business management. So again, very similar to your activities, your contracts will send out notifications based on when they're up and coming for renewal. And that's based on the notice date or notification date that you add in, and I'll show you how to do that. But these are just a few examples of the kind of contracts you might want to have on your system. So there's numerous ways you can add contracts. And I'll show you that. But within your summary page, again, it's going to be your first port of call. So you've got contracts notifications, which is going to be any contracts which are notifying you of any contracts which, as I say, are up for renewal. Then you've got your current contracts. Does what it says on the tin. So all contracts which are still live. Historical contracts, which are those which have been marked as ceased. And then your archived ones. So again, as standard or admin users, you will see all contracts on the system, and you can manage them, update them, renew them for a new term, and mark them as ceased. There's a few ways you can add contracts. The two key ways are create and import. You've got add as well, which will give you like a list of templates to choose from. But when you're creating a contract, again, all you're doing really is filling in the blanks, like you're setting up an activity or logging an issue. So it might be PE servicing contract. Again, description is a mandatory field, and really it's just filling in the blanks. So you've got your status, live, notice given, and ceased. You can all change that at any point. What happens at the end of the contract? The assigned to person, so the person that's responsible for managing the contract. The category which would have been set up previously within your settings or at multi-site level. And then the length. So like your activities, you can set any number of hours, days, months, or years. The notice date and the notification date are the two dates that will affect those reminders that come out. So you've got your notice date, which would usually be before the notice date. And again, you can customize that. It can be any number of days, weeks, or months, or you can actually set a specific date as well. And those are the key bits of information in order to add a contract onto the system. There's a few other bits and bobs in relation to like the payment information and all that kind of stuff as well. If you need to renew a contract, once you've added it to the system, once it's telling you it's up for renewal, you can just do that within here. Once you click save, you can renew that contract at any point. You would just be able to put in the current, as in the new contract start date, and it will tell you the date of the previous contract as well within here. And I'll quickly show you that a little bit later. But But the key thing is just to get all your contracts on the system first. You've got the option to import them using the spreadsheet as well. But any questions on adding a contract to the system? Okay. Perfect. So I'll just pop into one of my existing ones. As I say, if at any point you do need to renew one, all you need to do is add in the new contract start date. Or if it's ceased or you've given notice, you can select the various options within the status or at contract end field. If you do need to add a supplier to a contract, on the back of your question earlier, Stephen, you can do that as well. Just bear in mind that you would still need to select them, if they were responsible for an issue or an activity as well. And then you just add in your payment information in. So add your actual payments in, whether it be single or regular payments, just fill in that information out here. So for example, if it's 12-month contracts, just popping that information in and the dates that the frequency is going to be based on, save that. And then you can customize those on an individual payment basis as well. When you do need to renew a contract, what you do is add your payments to the bottom of this list, basically. So you would go add payment by the green button again and just add any future payments in as well when you're renewing a contract. And then your line items is any additional payments, so any call out charges or anything like that. Just get into habit of clicking the save button just to make sure that it commits to the system. Okay, I did not select a category. Save that. And then again, if you want to add assets or any activities, so you can add a contract to an activity or vice versa. So you can create an activity within here that will create it within the activities module, or again, select from any existing ones you have as well. Okay. Any attached files is just any documentation you want to upload. So whether it be the contract itself or anything that relates to it, you would be able to choose those within here. Can be any file in any format. Okay. Lovely. Again, you've got your audit trail, so any changes that are made to this contract, when it's renewed or whatever else, it will be listed on here for you. So if you're not sure what's happened at any point, and this goes for any other part of the system as well, wherever you've got that audit trail, it's going to list for you any changes that are made. Okay. Perfect. So that's pretty much it for contracts, at least at property level. I'll show you the multi-site area as well. But any other questions on managing contracts? Okay. So again, within the multi-site area, it's a little bit more straightforward in comparison to compliance. Again, you've got your setup, which is just managing those categories, which are independent of the activities and issues categories. And then within your summary, it's just a high level view basically of any kind of bad contracts, basically the status of all contracts really, and any associated costs as well, because you can add, as I say, that payment information in. So that's all contracts, and then those with attention required. Mine are all good, it looks like, which maybe they're all bad actually. On mine, you've got bad contracts as well. So see, I'm sure I had more than that, but maybe not. So that's your high level view of, and that will include, as I say, all contracts across the whole trust. And then under all contracts, again, it's like your issues spreadsheet really. So very, very similar. And you can download a report, various different reports in there as well. So you've got your bad contracts, for instance. Okay. So that may or may not be useful. You will find reports which are more useful than others depending on how you're going to use the system. Okay. Perfect. So that is the gist of contracts. There's just one last area we need to go through. So thank you for bearing with me. It is now this afternoon. Just before we finish off on suppliers, any other questions on contracts or anything else we've covered?
Look, we're good.
Excellent. So just to finish off then on suppliers, and that is at single site again. That's generally where you manage suppliers. There's no real area for multi-site for suppliers, so we won't need to touch that. But we'll just pop into suppliers again within business management. I'm just going to double check again on your system because you might have some. We'll have a look. No, it might be that you do have some suppliers at different sites, but it doesn't look like it. So what your suppliers enables you to do is create a directory of all the kind of suppliers you're using, whether it be in relation to activities or issues or contracts, whatever it may be. It enables you to have that drop down that you can choose from your suppliers within. So that's the basic part of the system. There is also a more advanced part of the system which enables you to request your suppliers to register with something called the Registered Supplier Directory, where you can request documentation from them, and they can upload any sort of due diligence related stuff within there. Regardless of that, as long as they've got an email, they can be notified of any activities or issues that you've assigned to that supplier. So in order to add a supplier, all you need to do is come into your all suppliers area, and then via the add suppliers button, really, once again, it's just filling in the blanks. So the key thing is your company name and email address. That's what we'd recommend as the bare bones. And then it's just adding any other information into the form here. You can always edit that at any point, again, using the pencil icon. And once you've added those suppliers, as I say, they will be listed in your drop downs. If you are wanting them to register with the Registered Suppliers Directory, they would need to confirm their details. What it also means is they will be able to kind of advertise themselves on the system. So anyone that's in that Registered Suppliers Directory will be visible to any other Every users, and they can search based on where they are located or what service they provide. And as I say, you can also carry out due diligence with them as well if they are within that Registered Suppliers Directory. And you can see you've got all of our suppliers that are within that Registered Suppliers Directory within here. So you can add them to your own, add them to your own suppliers, and you can search through the whole list as well using the various options you've got at the top here. If they do accept that invitation to register, then you can carry out due diligence on them and request certain documents from them. So when you send that invitation out, first thing they'll need to do is accept it, because they don't necessarily need to accept it, but if they do want to, as I say, it's win-win really, because you can kind of create reviews for them on the system and they're advertised then to every user. If they accept that invitation, you can then say, I want to see your company accounts or health and safety policy and so on. And there's various options in here. These are fixed in place. You can't customize these, but they can upload any documents that would fit the bill for any of these options. And they'll have their own version of the system where they can do that, and you can then receive them within here. You can have your own documents that they will be able to see and confirm that they've read them. So it might be your safeguarding policy or anything related to DBS or anything else that you want them to see. And then any messages you need to send to them within the system itself directly, you can do that. But again, they would need to be on that registered suppliers directory for that. So if they're not in the registered suppliers directory, it's just a much more simplified, it's just your yellow pages basically. But if they do want, they don't, it's up to you really, because they can do a lot of the stuff they can already do as a registered supplier without being registered. They can receive notifications of issues and activities, but it just means they've got their own kind of portal if they are registered, and you can, as I say, carry out due diligence on them and all that kind of stuff. But we do have a lot of suppliers on there, so if have a look through the registered suppliers directory first, and then if there's any brand new ones, feel free to send that invitation, which you would do by selecting the little icon here when it has an email address. Okie doke. So hopefully not too everyed out. That is pretty much everything that Laura has asked me to take you through today. I appreciate we did have quite a lot of questions. So I don't know if there's any others at all from anyone. I know we have overrun as well, so thank you for bearing with me. We'll still count it as an hour and a half, don't worry. But any outstanding questions at all from anyone?
Yes, please. Can I just ask about the compliance matrix?
Yeah.
The red, amber, green matrix. That's obviously at a point in time. That as I look at the matrix today, all of the annuals have had an inspection within the last 12 months. All the 6 months you've had one in the last 6 months, and so on.
Yeah.
Something that is a monthly check, for example, will be green if it's had a check within the last month. Is there any way of knowing the fact that actually that monthly check has been missed 10 times out of the last 11 months? It just happens that the most recent one was within a month, so it's showing as green. Is there sort of a historical tracking that says, although things are looking rosy today, there's been a pretty checkered past?
I don't know, to be honest. I'm not 100% sure on that one. Let's have a look just at this one, for example.
So it's very easy to be up to date when the auditor comes round, but it's sort of, how do you be able to demonstrate that actually you're not just on it when you're being watched, you're on it the whole time?
Sure. I don't think, I can check, but I'm not sure there's an easy way of checking that. Let me just have a look on mine. Just bear with me 1 second. Activity history. So you've always got your activity history within the history and audit tab on the specific site. You can see you've got some red stuff in there. Just going to check this one, for example. You could kind of get the idea within the activity history tab, because based on maybe the due date that you've set, it needs to happen on a regular cycle and it needs to happen on a particular date. So you could kind of glean that from the activity history, but I don't think there's a way of reporting on that at the moment. Let me just see if I can. Just bear with me. I'm going to find one which I have completed regularly. Always do asbestos, I think. So I guess if you knew, that this needed to be done on sort of the third of every month, for example, you can kind of see there that there's 2 which have, well, you know, that would ideally be different months, but you could see that there's 2 there that which would be overdue. But in terms of an actual report, I mean, there's always the actual activity history report. Let's just have a look at that one. So it's not kind of explicit, but you can see that full audit trail there. It's not quite the same as the matrix, but you can get that information, yeah. So
Okay. All right.
but yeah, it just needs a bit of a deep dive, really. So okay, again, that's an example of something to offer as feedback as well. We'll certainly look at building stuff like that in.
Okay, great. All right, thank you.
Lovely, no worries. Any other questions at all? No. Okay, how do you feel about the system now?
First instinct is it has far more functionality than we would ever consider using at the moment, but certainly
Fair
the
enough.
bare bones of what we needed to do seem pretty good.
Sure, great.
I think
yeah.
it's more about how we choose to use it, not what it does.
Sure. Yeah, certainly. Yeah. Well, I'm glad it gives you more functionality than you want at the moment. That's always a good sign. But it is all there for you to use. It can be a little bit daunting when you're first starting off with it, but you know, just take your time. I mean, a lot of it's already been set up anyway, so you're kind of good to go. But certainly for those checklists, sounds like you need a few conversations on those. If you do need any additional support with that, please do let us know. We can see what we can do for you. But I know there are some updates coming to that very soon. So, okay.
Good. Thank you, Mike.
No worries. My pleasure. Did you want me to send the recording out at all?
I'm okay.
I'm fine without it. Thank you.
Okay. No worries. It is available for 60 days. So if you do change your mind, just let me know. What I'll also...
Sorry, it might be worth it to the ones that have just left. Just
Okay. Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, so I'll send that out for you. If not today, it'll be before the end of the week. So it just depends on whether Teams is behaving itself. But I will send that out for you. What I'll also do is send a link to I'll send a follow-up email. Within there, there'll be a link to a feedback survey. If you don't mind completing that, just based on your experience for training this afternoon / this morning. Again, I appreciate you staying on. Thank you for that. I'm glad you're not every doubt yet. It does happen. But yeah, there will be a link to a survey in there. If you don't mind completing that, it'll be very much appreciated. If you do have any further outstanding questions, you know, please do use the live chat or raise a ticket with the support team via email. If you don't hear from them, please do let me know. I know you do have a fairly extensive training budget as well. So if you do want to book in more training, you know, if there's anything you need me to recap or go into a bit more detail on, feel free to do so. If you speak to Laura, she can get that sorted for you.
Smashing. Thank you.
Lovely. My pleasure, guys. All I can say is enjoy using the system.
Thank you very much indeed.
All right. No
Good,
problem.
thank you.
Nice to meet
Bye
you
now.
all. All
Bye
right.
now.
Have a good day. Take care.
Bye.